I'm Maryn.
And I'm Christie.
And you're listening to Hung, a podcast where we talk about true crime from the court of law to the court of public opinion.
And today we are going to be addressing Maryn's part of the Tracey Nix case, telling me why it is that this is a case that we want to talk about, because it does seem pretty straightforward and doesn't seem like there should be much gray area for anybody. So if you haven't listened to our first episode about Tracey Nix, you'll want to go back and listen to that and then come back and see what Maryn has to say.
Yep, if you don't want any spoilers, if
That's
you want to
right.
experience it from the juror box.
All right.
Well,
So,
I need to keep it a little bit of suspense still,
Oh, no.
unfortunately. Just because
I still don't know what the verdict was.
I know. And you won't know for just a tiny bit more.
No.
I know. Well, mostly just because we talked a little bit after we finished recording yesterday. My mom mentioned something that was kind of interesting that we didn't mention in the first episode, was that this trial actually only had 6 jurors, which obviously when she saw that, she found surprising because that seems out of the norm. So we kind of looked into that more, like, wait, why would that be? And thought it might be something interesting that you might not know either. So it turns out that 12 jurors are not actually required for every trial. The jury size is based on the type of charge, not how serious the outcome feels. So apparently misdemeanor cases and then some lower level felonies are allowed to use a 6-person jury. Because this was not a homicide or a capital case, this qualified for only 6 jurors.
It is kind of weird, though, because it is about
There is a death,
but
the charge is not murder. The charge is manslaughter. Some other interesting things or things to note for a 6-person jury, obviously a unanimous agreement is still required. That can make things a little bit different than a 12-person jury.
fewer people to have to get to agree.
Exactly. Yep. Fewer people needed to agree. And then each juror themselves would carry more influence in those debates. And if you have one really strong personality, they can more easily control the outcome or get people to their side of things that might be a little more like, I don't know. It does say that sometimes different emotional reactions take up more space in the room, whatever that means. But especially in cases involving children. But the deliberations do tend to be shorter. And that could be either due to the size of the jury, or it could be due to the nature of the case, right?
Sure.
If they're not capital offenses, then maybe it's easier to decide.
And if they have fewer witnesses and fewer debatable facts, then maybe it doesn't take as long to review the information. And true, you have less people that need to express their opinion as well, so.
Yep, and it is statistically easier to reach a verdict with 6 jurors than with 12, because it has to be unanimous, right? So to get 6 people.
True. You don't want a lot of hung juries, so you want one way or the other, it to be clear, because it takes a lot of money to put on a case. You don't want to have to put on a case more than once.
Yeah, yep, that makes sense. Okay, now that we've got that interesting fact out of the way, we can get to the jury decision.
Okay.
So the 6-person jury deliberated for 2.5 hours. They came back with the first count, which was aggravated manslaughter, not guilty.
Okay, so that agrees with me.
Yep. Second count, leaving a child unattended in a vehicle longer than 15 minutes, causing bodily harm, not just
What?
kidding.
I was like, no way. I was like, are you kidding? I'm
guilty.
Okay, yeah.
Guilty, yes.
I was about to throw this table over because
No. Yeah, I mean, that one is like no brainer.
yeah, I mean,
right?
you can't, there's no question. You have to at least find guilty on that charge.
Yes. So a couple of months later was her sentencing hearing. She was sentenced to 5 years in prison, including including a time served of 2 months and 26 days. That is the maximum time that could be sentenced.
Oh my gosh.
I believe that she went into prison actually right after the end of the trial. 2 months and 26 days later was the sentencing.
That's interesting. So she sounds like she was not in jail or being held.
I don't think so.
Before or during the trial, but once they came back with a guilty verdict on that, she was kept.
I think the
custody.
minimum would be 60 days in prison. So either way, she was at least going to have to serve 60 days, right? So I guess they're like, well, send you straight to prison. You can get started on that. Like,
Wow.
I don't really know. But yeah, so the judge decided 5 years.
Did he say why, like what his reasoning was for giving her the maximum sentence?
Yes. So in the sentence hearing itself, so Drew and Kayla, the parents, both spoke during the sentencing. Tracey spoke herself. And during the sentencing, the judge mentioned that he felt that Tracey gave contradicting statements to what was presented in court during the sentence hearing.
Okay.
For example, she said, well, I always put the car seat behind the passenger side so that I can see if I turn my head a little bit. But when I pulled up, there was a car really close and we couldn't get it in that side. So Kayla put the car behind my seat.
So she said that
during
like,
the sentencing.
During the statements that she had to make before sentencing?
Mm-hmm. Right, which is contrary to just like a lot of what was said of where she normally would put it or whatever.
Well, and also seems to me that it seems like an excuse, you know,
Right.
like that that doesn't seem like, I mean, this is not where you argue your case, right? This is where, in my mind, where you express your remorse and how terrible this situation is and that you wish it hadn't happened and, you know, all of that, not like, well, it wasn't really my fault because, you know, things were different than how they normally are. But I get that if that's really the case, but then I almost feel like she should have gotten on the stand and said that in court instead of trying to say that at sentencing when a decision's already been made and now you're sound like at least you're trying to,
well, I mean,
you know,
maybe just minimize the sentence, right? Like,
well, of course
you're maybe pleading your case in that way of like, well, maybe why do I deserve a shorter sentence versus a longer one, right?
Yeah, but I mean, it's also kind of, you know, the whole argument is she just forgot. She forgot. And
well, it didn't work in her favor.
And when you forget, you don't remember until you remember, right? So I think just now making this other, you know,
well, it's like if it had been put where I normally would have put it, I would have remembered and blah, blah, blah. Well, she also said that when she put Uriel in the car that she like put everything in the diaper bag underneath the seat. And so that wasn't there to remind her either. Though I guess there were photos of maybe some baby paraphernalia in the car. He made it sound like there could have been things that would remind you. And in fact, your car has a feature that there's like a light on the dashboard to show that some, you know, there's
weight.
And when you turn off the car, it dings at you. You know, like I don't think it like ding, 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 but it will make like a, you know,
little reminder.
Right, exactly. So,
well, it's also interesting. Like to me, I think, I mean, hindsight, sure, I get, but I feel like I do things to, I'm going to set this somewhere that is going to be in plain view so that I do see it. You know, for me personally, I'm thinking ahead to try and prevent certain things that could happen. And instead, all the things that you're doing are counter to helping you remember.
True. So what the judge said at the end, he says, what I know for a fact is Tracey Nix left Uriel in the car at 2 p.m. for over 3 hours. At no time during that 10,800 seconds did she think 1 second about her granddaughter, which I thought was a little bit dramatic, but...
Yeah. Well, I mean, it is hard because she's talking to her other daughter, talking to her other grandson, you know, like
practicing
things that
piano.
you would
there's like
think that might, like, oh my gosh, I have another grandchild, right? Like, you know, you can get distracted by other things, but I can see where, like, oh, if I'm interacting with a grandchild, maybe that would be like, oh my gosh, grandchild, you know?
Yes,
and
totally.
it didn't. Yeah.
Right, like you remembered you were going to have dinner with one of your grandchildren, but couldn't remember that the other grandchild was in your car. Like,
right.
Yeah. He also said that what he mostly heard from her, both during the hearing and in the body cam and interview footage, was sorrow and not remorse. So kind of I think along the lines of what you were saying of like, obviously sad, but not like maybe taking accountability. When she spoke, she wasn't saying, I forgot and I'm so sorry that I did. She was saying, well, almost trying to make some excuses for herself, right?
Yeah. Well, and I see what he's saying as far as I can't be here, I can't do this, I can't face her mother.
Right. It's like, because I can't face what has happened and not, oh my gosh, that poor baby.
I can see that. I mean, it didn't read exactly that way to me when I heard it. She did seem really devastated.
Yeah.
But that does make sense to me, too, thinking that seems to be more about you than about the baby, about the consequences that are going to come to you rather than the consequences of that decision and what happened to your granddaughter.
Yeah, definitely. I think if she had shown more of like taking that responsibility on, and even maybe more of a like, well, whatever they give me, you know, I want to pay my time kind of thing, you might have been like, well, you feel like you understand the gravity of the situation and maybe you don't need 5 years, you know. Now some background in general. So Tracey Howard Nix was 67 years old at the time of the trial, so she would probably be 69 now. She was 65 at the time of Uriel's death.
Okay.
She was married to Nun Nay Nix, who goes by Nay. Tracey had worked as a principal and a teacher in Hardy County for 39 years, which we talked about. She had 2 daughters, Kayla Nix Schock and Rebecca Nix Tucker. In her sentencing hearing, it was kind of interesting. She talked about, she was like, Kayla, I want to talk directly to you, you know. She's like, yeah, when I was trying to get pregnant and it was really hard, and you know, I had to take medication for fertility and then even had a surgery to, she said, clean things out to be able to have you. And kind of in a way, she was like saying like, you were so wanted, and I couldn't even imagine if somebody had taken you away from me and how that would have been. I don't know, as a way to try to relate, I guess. They lived in Wauchula, Florida, or Wauchula, a small town in Hardy County with a population of 4,900 to 4,984 people. So pretty small town. Kayla and Drew Schock met and dated while in Hardy High School. I'm not sure if they were in the same grade, but Drew graduated in 2005. Hers wasn't public anywhere. But their first kid, Asher, wasn't born until 2019. So I think they probably weren't together that whole time. And my guess is she's probably a couple years younger than Drew. I feel like that's pretty normal. I found a lot of interesting things on Facebook.
Interesting.
It was interesting. It definitely humanized, I guess, a lot of the people in it. I'm like, oh, yep, you're a normal person making Facebook posts and whatever, you know.
Yeah.
And there is a page called Hardy County Truth. It posts a lot of just random stuff from like county news, but it posted a lot about this trial, obviously. And Kayla herself would comment on a lot of these posts.
So this was started before the case or any of that happened. It was a Facebook group for citizens of the
Hardy County. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. And I think somebody on there had commented something along the lines of like, man, I feel so bad for Drew and Kayla, and I would understand if they wanted to move or something to be in this small community and have it always brought up and whatever. And in response to that comment, she said, Drew Schock and I dated in Hardy High School. We graduated here. We reconnected here. Our home is here. So...
Right. Like, why would I move?
Right. And she also said we reconnected here. So to me, that's like, okay, she did say they dated in high school, but then they probably didn't stay together after high school, but then they reconnected. Not that that's like the most important bit here, but they had their first son, Asher Schock, in March of 2019. And then they had another child, a daughter, Uriel Schock, on March 5th, 2022. They were married May 18th of 2023. And then they have since had another child, a daughter, Adriel Schock, on August 26, 2024. I wrote 36. That doesn't exist. And their most recent addition, a son, Elam Schock, on December 16th of last year.
Oh, wow.
So
just a few weeks old then. Yeah, well, as of this recording.
Right.
You're not going to hear it for about 6 months. So
yeah, right. What was not allowed in court was that the tragic death of Uriel Schock was not an isolated incident.
Okay, what does that mean?
In between Asher and Uriel, Kayla and Drew had another child. His name was Ezra Schock, and he was born on August 13th, 2020. On December 22nd, 2021, Nay and Tracey were babysitting Ezra.
How old would he have been?
16 months.
Okay.
There were...
I'm getting chills, actually. I'm like, I don't even, like, I can foresee the end, obviously, but okay.
There are a couple of inconsistencies in the story, but the result is kind of the same here in general. About 9:30 to 10 a.m., Nay was rocking Ezra in the rocking chair, and Tracey was sitting on the sofa. Ezra fell asleep, so Nay laid him down on the rocking chair, and he went to go run some errands. So Tracey was awake and still sitting on the sofa when he left. At some point, Tracey fell asleep. She said later that this may have been due to a medication. It's blanked out in the incident report, but it says it was most likely due to blank. Tracey stated that this can cause her to be tired. Tracey stated that at night she will take blank and blank for blank. So obviously some sort of medication.
True. But I'm like, but this is daytime, so it's a little strange to say, oh, well, I take this medication at night for some reason.
And then right after she says, I've been doing this for 15 years and normally I wake up refreshed, so I don't know why it would be different today.
So still attributing it to the medication that had been taken the night prior, not saying that she had taken something that day.
Yes, correct. When she woke up, Ezra was gone. She first obviously looked for him around the house, and when she didn't find him, she got in her car. They had a kind of a long driveway out in the country, right? So she drove to the end of that, and then she kept driving to this stop sign, and then she kind of thought, he's 16 months old, he's not going to get that far. So she turned around. At this point, she calls Nay and says, hey, Ezra's missing, right? So he's already checking out of the grocery store. He's starting to come home. As she's driving back to her house...
I'm trying to predict in my mind, what is this? What is going to happen?
As she was driving back, she saw something floating in the duck pond near their home. She realized it was 16-month-old Ezra floating face down, jumped out of the car, pulled him out of the water, and immediately started CPR. A neighbor heard her screaming. He came out and called 911. It was like noted, well, she didn't call 911. Well, I don't know what's...
Yeah,
but you got to get 911 there somewhere.
With kids, you got to start CPR right away.
Yeah, I mean, I know CPR in general, the more you delay, right? So, and as she's screaming, so obviously he's hoping to get somebody's attention. And so the neighbor comes out and he calls 911. And then when Nay gets home, he sees all of this going on. At this point, he still doesn't know what is happening, right? The last thing he knew was Ezra, I can't find Ezra, right? So he comes and he sees this commotion. He takes over CPR, and Tracey, she was in her pajamas still, so he tells her to go in and get changed, which is kind of interesting because EMS is on their way. Once EMS arrived, Ezra was airlifted to the hospital with a faint pulse. At some point, Nay had called Drew and just said, there's something wrong with Ezra. Then Drew called Kayla. She was 6 months pregnant at the time with Uriel. And she immediately raced to her parents' home. She was going 86 miles per hour on these country roads. She said that she could see the helicopter, so she didn't see a stop sign, and she ended up in a head-on collision.
Wow.
Yeah, during this. She said, so she crashed head-on into another driver deploying her airbags. She said, I don't remember how I got out, but I got out and started running to my parents' house at this point. I don't have shoes, I'm just running. That was my desperation to get to my son. I mean, she must not have been going 86 miles per hour during that crash, I guess, because I don't know how she would have just gotten out. Yeah. But I am a little bit confused by that. She said that in an interview, but there is police reports of an officer who was there directing traffic around the landing zone for the helicopter. And in his report, he said, while directing traffic, a white SUV arrived. A female subject exited the SUV and verbally stated she was involved in a traffic crash believed to be at blank intersection. The subject verbally stated that she left the traffic scene to come check on her child at this location. So I don't know if maybe somebody picked her up on the way, like saw her and was like, where are you going?
Or her car was still drivable. But
well, she said she got out and started running, so I don't know.
Yeah, that does seem strange.
To me, the only thing that I'm like, either that's just not true or somebody picked her up on the way or something, right?
There's some detail missing in the middle that both things are true but don't connect with the way the story's been told.
And I was going through like some of the Hardy County like police records, whatever, and I found that she did receive a ticket for
leaving the
not
scene?
obeying a stop sign.
Oh, okay.
Which I get. I mean, I guess maybe that's like the least of what they could give her, but I'm like, come on. You're going to give her a ticket and her son, this just happened. So Ezra did pass in the hospital the next day, December 23rd, 2021. In their investigation, they measured the height of the doorknob to get outside which they measured it at 35 inches, but it wasn't a knob style. It was like a lever, handle style. And it had kind of a swoop in it, so it wasn't straight across. So at its lowest point, it was actually 34.5 inches, so half an inch shorter than that, which would be easier for a child to open than a knob. A medical examiner measured Ezra's reach at 36 inches from the tip of his fingers to his foot, so it is plausible that he opened the door on his own. The door also had a deadbolt on the inside with the key part on the outside, but that was left unlocked, presumably. There were some weird inconsistencies in their different interviews, but I don't think that necessarily means anything. It's just kind of weird. In their first interview, Nay says Tracey was for sure awake when he left, but Tracey says she doesn't remember him leaving and was asleep. But later, it seems that Tracey says that she was awake when he left. And then they take them in a couple days later. Well, they go over to their house on the 29th of December, and they say, hey, we'd like to schedule an interview about it. And she says, can we actually do it tomorrow? I'm packing up some Christmas decorations today. I'm like, okay, that's a little weird. But so they do it the next day, but they interview them separately. And Nay makes a point to say that Ezra hated water. He hated taking baths. He also says that Ezra was known to open doors throughout the house, and that actually when he left, he put this metal door stopper that's shaped like a dachshund on the outside of the door to prevent Ezra from opening the door. But Tracey, in her own interview, she says she's never known Ezra to open doors. She said that they would use that door stopper sometime, but it was because the cat would sometimes open the door, but not Ezra. And she also said that he loved water and bath time. So it's just really weird inconsistencies there.
Yeah, that is weird. It's almost, I don't know, but it seems like if you think about the situation from each person's perspective, like whether these are intentional, mistruths or whatever, but thinking, well, but he hated water. I would never think that he would go near the pond. I had this door stopper, so, he shouldn't have been able to get out. Like things that actually serve his internal narrative for himself to say it can't be my fault, which of course you don't want it to be your fault, right? So I think this is a normal, natural thing to do, where I think with Tracey, it's the opposite. The way that your brain would work things so that it's not your fault is he never opened doors. I would never imagine that he would go outside. And then that doorstop, well, sometimes we used it for the cat, but we really weren't thinking that he would get out, so there was really no reason to try and prevent it.
Well, if it was used that day, it didn't work. So
right. And then, if he did get out, it makes perfect sense that he would want to play in the water because he loves water. So both of the stories fit their own narrative for helping them to feel better about this is something that I could never have predicted, and therefore it wasn't really my fault, which I think is a very human response. And so that's not a judgment on them, but it makes those inconsistencies make more sense if you think about it in the way of your brain trying to make sense of things and it's too painful for that to have been your fault. And so you're going to put things in an order that makes sense to you that it's not your fault.
Yep. Yeah, I think that makes sense. Well, with that being said, does that mean I think that that's a cover-up? There was something intentional there? No, I don't. I don't think it was intentional. I do think that it was an accident. And it looks like the police were going to charge her with child neglect, but the Florida Attorney's Office stated that a one-time lapse of judgment would not establish culpable negligence of the caretaker.
But it's interesting that they don't allow that in because then this is a pattern of behavior.
Now it's the second time.
Yeah.
So,
but it doesn't make sense why they would choose to charge her this next time, that they can see the connection, but no one else can. The jury can't if they're not told that, this has happened before.
Yep. It does seem that Kayla and her family at that point kind of wanted to forgive, forget, and move on and kind of try and heal.
With Asher or?
With Ezra.
With Ezra.
Yeah. Also, that being said, just reminded me that Tracey, when she was on the stand during the hearing for her sentencing, she said, Uriel. I'm like, what? Oh, that's so bad.
Oh.
That's my name is Maryn, right? And so Maryn is a name that I often get called. That would be if Grandma killed me, right? I died while Grandma was watching me, and she got on the stand, and then she said, well, Maryn, I'm Maryn. I'm like, that just looks so bad, you know?
Right.
I'm like, oh.
You're like, you don't even know your own grandchild's
Right.
name.
Oh, gosh, you think you would know, right? So in Ezra's obituary, they say he'll be desperately missed by his parents, Kayla and Drew Schock, and his brother Asher. He is also survived by his grandparents, Tracey and Nay Nix, Joanne and Greg Schock.
But they aren't going to desperately miss him. It's also, they stop.
Right. Well, and the point being that in Uriel's obituary, they just mention Nay and they don't mention Tracey. Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, at this point, they're like she was survived by her grandfather, Nay Nix, and grandparents, Joanne and Greg Schock, you know.
Wow.
So they cut her out of the obituary
that's a
Uriel.
true disownment. Like, we're not even going to acknowledge you at all. That is crazy. Well, I did say when Kayla got on the stand and they were asking her who Tracey was, she said, "That's my mother." You know, like she did kind of sigh at the end of it, and I got the sense that there was, I don't know, there wasn't this was a terrible accident only, and I don't have any hard feelings towards my mother. But it was a mild, but I kind of got that sense.
Yeah. There are some people online that are like, oh my gosh, Kayla and Drew should be charged for trusting their child with her mother again, you know, which it is a little bit hard to imagine why she would then trust her next child with her grandmother. But I do understand it to a degree. She said in an interview, "We were anxious, but I loved my mother, and I'm a daughter that wanted her mom in her life in some capacity. And in that moment, I thought that I could believe in second chances. When I was told that Ezra's death was an accident, some slivered child part of me thought, okay, good. I get to keep this mom, this grandmother, this person," which totally understandable. I mean,
yeah. I mean, that is heartbreaking, right? Because accidents happen all the time. You know, drowning is super common. And
what we said is the number one cause of death for children in Florida.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. I mean, but you could see it as a tragedy that it's just this terrible accident, and you move forward together as a family because what else are you going to do?
I mean, at the time, I think the direction or suggestion from her doctor at the time, being 6 months pregnant, was to try to refrain from learning anything that might super upset her more. So I think she said she didn't really know all the details at the time. I guess she probably just asked, and the police said it was an accident, you know?
Yeah.
So, and she claims that after Uriel was born, that the limited time Tracey was allowed with her was always supervised. So it seems that having her watch her that day was out of the norm. But again, I was kind of confused because you were saying in court, she said she would watch her 4 days a week or something like that.
So they said in court that the week prior to Yuri's death that they had watched her 4 times at their home.
And maybe supervised meant Nay as well, you know, so.
I mean, it was interesting during Kayla's testimony. She did point out that when she called and asked her mom about watching Yuri, and then her mom said, "Well, I'm going out to lunch with these 3 ladies," and she said, "I knew these 3 ladies really well, so I felt that I could trust," which I thought was a little strange because I wouldn't really be thinking about that with sending your grandma is going to take you to lunch with her friends, and I'm worried about who are those friends? And
no, it's this extra layer.
Do I feel safe having them sit at a table with her? I wouldn't have even crossed my mind. And so it did come across as an extra level of vigilance, which now makes sense, even though those people have nothing to do, with anything.
No, it was more so they will watch my mom, not that they will watch the baby, right? There will be other responsible people around, you know?
Well, and the other difference is that it seemed when Nate got on the stand, typically he was always the one that picked Yuri up and brought her to the house, and then he would take her inside and Tracey would take over inside. So maybe there was this aspect of, well, Nay comes and gets her and takes her over there, and they're watching her together. Right? But this was kind of an outlier situation.
Yep. So with that being said, would that have changed your mind as a member of the jury if you had been?
I mean, so there is pattern of behavior, right? like you brought up. But I still think in the definition of the what has to be met for that crime, I don't know if I could have gotten past that unless I said, whoa, she should have been taking steps to make sure she was being responsible with this grandchild. She should have been extra vigilant, like her daughter was extra vigilant about the safety of her child. She should have been more vigilant about the safety of this grandchild. So maybe that would have changed where I would have said, okay, this was not a like, oh my gosh, I just never even occurred to me that anything could ever happen when you know that, what year was that?
2021.
And this was 2023?
Yes.
So it hasn't.
I mean, she was 7 months old when she died, and Ezra had been 16 months old. She was 6 months pregnant when, I mean, and he died December of 2021.
Right. So this is a year and a half-ish. Right?
Yeah.
Is that right? Yeah. You would think she would have heightened awareness because something has happened before. So maybe that would make me feel like she should not have forgotten, right? She should have done things to make sure she didn't forget. And that does show a lack of care, that you don't have enough insight or care to ensure the safety of your grandchild that you are responsible for. So that might have tipped the scale for me to say, okay, I think I can see that as, you can't just say, well, she just simply forgot. Well, I get, we do forget things. However, when you've already had a situation like that, then maybe that,
100%. It's like, that's even, because it's like, would a reasonable person have forgotten?
Right.
Would a reasonable person who was already had a grandchild die while in their care, would they have forgotten?
Right.
You would think definitely not, because I mean, and here it's like this moment to prove yourself, maybe, of like, okay, like you would be, and again, we've talked about the drive was 7 to 9 minutes. It wasn't this extended period of time. Even if she was asleep and quiet, it doesn't make sense.
Right.
Now, I don't know if maybe it would be possible if they'd done a different charge, maybe of, I don't know, child neglect or something like that. You're right, maybe in some of the definition of the aggravated manslaughter, if they're like, well, I don't know, can it meet this? But I mean,
and
again,
I don't know like how each of the different levels, I don't know what the actual definitions are of all of them. So I don't know if there's one that would have been like, well, it doesn't matter if you forgot, it still would meet this, that you did something. I don't know if that exists, but if that did exist, that was above the level of the left a child in a car, for longer than 15 minutes, then I think that would have been a no-brainer.
Sure. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, to me, it's even more indication like something is wrong. Something must be wrong with Tracey, something, because it just doesn't twice. Like the first time you'd be like, well, that's really sad. The second time you're like, how?
Right.
And that, I when I sent you the body cam footage, I had to send you timestamps, right? And there was some like, oh, there's a really short little bit in there that you couldn't see. It's because like, she's like, I can't do this again. Sometimes she would say like, I can't do this again. Like, and it's the same daughter. She said, it's the same daughter. Like that,
that again is like, it's about her, the impact on her. Like, which I can't do this again. I can't face her.
Yes. And even more understandable, her reaction in a way of the like, oh my gosh, I can't. I cannot face her after I've already let a child of hers die while in my care. I cannot see her again now that I've done this again. You know what I mean?
Yes. And it should be, I don't ever want that to happen again, because I went through that with my other grandchild, with my daughter, and I am never going to let that happen again, right? Like, if that's the level of response you get when Yuri dies, that should be in your brain on repeat, that like, I'm never going to let something like that happen again.
Well, it should have happened with Ezra, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, of course it should have, but
shouldn't take two times.
Right, for sure, one time.
To get to that.
Yeah, you should be, I'm never letting that happen again. Not like, I can't do it again. It's like, well, yeah, then why didn't you prevent it from happening?
Right, exactly. 100%. Do you think that it was right for them to keep the prior instance out of the trial?
I don't personally, because I do think it goes to a pattern of behavior. So for that reason, I think it actually does apply to this situation. I think it's relevant to this situation, where some other things maybe aren't. But this does seem exactly relevant to this situation.
I think like what's hard is because she was never charged with anything. It can be hard, I guess, but I don't know. At the same time, it's like, well, if we're talking about pattern of behavior, then with Colin Griffith, I'm like, well, that is also a pattern of behavior of your parent died while with you and you claim self-defense. You know what I mean? But it is also different. Babies aren't that different from each other when two different instances with your parents could be, I don't know.
Right. Yeah. I mean, Colin Griffith was definitely more complicated, and it is true that there is potentially this pattern of behavior that could have come into play, and I think if it had, it would have made a difference in the verdict that I came to. Maybe that's the right effect, maybe not, I don't know, but I do think this, because you're dealing with two minors that have no, I mean, they cannot do anything for themselves, and they're under your care. And I do think your behavior in that situation is relevant.
Yeah. No, 100%. And I also think, especially if your reason for not allowing charges to be brought the first time, like we said, is because there's not a pattern. A one-time event doesn't mean that, well, now it is a pattern. So both of those should be in there, right?
Right.
Though I have seen in recent interviews that I think that they are looking into pursuing, probably doing a separate trial for Ezra potentially because of this, right?
Yeah, it's true, because she was never brought on charges, and there's
precedent
I'm
now.
Sure,
like,
the statute of limitations is not run out on that.
Probably not.
And they're not going to be able to bring Yuri's death into it because it happened after. So they won't be able to bring that in, where they could have the other way. But I can see with the inconsistencies in the story, and because they know this, I think that's also like, well, because they knew that, they brought this case. And so then now because of this, then they've decided they're going to bring that case, but the facts are still not going to come into it. Like they're not going to overlap at all.
No, but I think they feel a little bit like, well, we do feel like, hey, we did get some justice maybe for Uriel, but not for Ezra. And so this feeling of like, well, even if it came to the same thing at the end, I don't know.
5 more years.
Yeah. So we'll see.
So she's been in jail now for prison now, but prison for how long?
At the time of recording, almost a year. Because it was January 15th or 16th of 2025 that she was put in prison, and it is today, January 9th of 2026. So
chances are she'll get out early on good behavior, which probably feels bad.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Maybe not.
They may say, sorry, we're just going to make you serve the whole time, even if you're
it was
the best prisoner.
Such a big case, too. I don't know. But I did find something really interesting. I haven't heard this anywhere else. The news article to it was shared in this Hardy County Truth Facebook profile. So January 15th, 2025. Starting on January 15th, 2025, Tracey had been held in a cell with 2 cellmates, Sandra Boteo Cardosa and Rosanna Sanchez. But on February 27th of 2025, Tracey was moved to a different prison for her own safety. This was because Tracey had been involved in consensual sexual encounters with Rosanna, including at least one instance involving Sandra.
What?
Right.
Wait, why is that for her own safety, though?
Because after this point, she says that she, at Rosanna's request, wrote a love letter to her, which was later used as leverage. Rosanna used the letter to threaten to expose her sexuality. She drafted a fabricated newspaper advertisement portraying a romantic relationship between the two of them. And on the back of it, a note saying, if you don't pay me $1,000, I'm going to send this to the local news station, right? So she contacts Nay, tells him about it. They have video surveillance of Nay meeting up with Sandra's sister and passing over an envelope containing $1,000 in cash to her in the parking lot of the sheriff's office. So, okay, right.
Allegedly.
It's not alleged.
Well, we have to say. They allege that there was $1,000 in the envelope.
Sure, yes.
They have a
that's
video
true.
of an envelope
Sure.
that they are alleging contains $1,000 being passed to Sandra's sister.
Yeah. So, and you know how these things go. They get the initial money. That's not enough. Okay. So, despite the payoff, the alleged extortion continued. Rosanna then demanded an additional $10,000 from Tracey on February 26th with the threat that she would publicly expose her sexuality if she refused. Tracey said that Rosanna said, quote, "If you want me to keep your secret, you're going to have to pay $10,000 more. Surprise." Okay.
Oh my gosh, this is like a bad movie.
I know.
You know?
And surprise. At this point, Tracey gets smart and she tells detention staff what's going on, and they move her that same day. And then Sandra was charged with extortion, illegal use of a two-way communication device, and conspiracy. And Rosanna was charged with attempt to commit extortion, and conspiracy.
Wow.
So
Sandra and Roseanne were the two cellmates, and Roseanne was the one doing the threatening, but Sandra was the one helping collect the money and being kind of the go-between? Am I getting that right?
opposite, but doesn't really matter. She was having sexual encounters with Rosanna, including at least one with Sandra, but the money went to Sandra's sister, even though Rosanna was the person that mostly she was having relations with, and was the one who was behind all of, like, the giving her the notes and if you don't pay me this much. But then the money was going to the other girl's sister, which was...
Right. So that's why I was saying Rosanna's the one who was making the threats.
Yep.
But it was Sandra who was actually collecting and organizing the payoff.
Right.
That's weird.
I don't know.
The other thing that bothers me about that whole situation is that it's another example of this lack of accountability.
Totally.
The fact that she runs to Nay, they collect this money, they make this payoff so that she doesn't have to face the consequences of her choices.
Yeah.
Which I understand, except it's just the fact that we have these three instances laid out next to each other.
Exactly.
That it's just another example of that.
Right. I have no issue with same-sex orientation or any of that. It's just like the circumstances of it all on top of everything else.
Right.
In the situation that she's in, she's awaiting sentencing. It's not like she was there for a long time yet. It had only been maybe a month that she'd been there. And I definitely think if I were her daughter and I saw that, I'd be like, what's going on? You're like in jail and this is what's happening?
Right. A disrespect of what's actually happening and why she's there.
Well, Neo's a good husband, I guess.
Yeah.
I think if I were him and she said, I need $1,000 or they're going to find out, I'd be like, well, guess they're going to find out.
I mean, it makes me wonder, though, did she admit to, like, hey, I actually had consensual relations with these people and now they're doing this, or they're going to tell these lies about me, or they're going to say this. True. I mean, who knows if what she told Nate.
Well, I think what's interesting is in the end, it got put in the newspaper anyway.
But it didn't make it very far because you haven't heard it from anybody else.
No, I mean, and not that I've listened to a whole bunch of different things about it, but I hadn't heard it anywhere else. But at least locally, it's for sure out there. And she was kind of a figurehead, I believe, like in the community. So it's kind of like, whoa. Yeah. Understandably, that's why the extortion worked initially on her, because she didn't want that getting out about her. Because
and understandably,
on top of having 2 grandchildren die while under her care, they can't possibly know that on top of that, she also might like women.
Right.
That's too much. It just feels ridiculous. I don't know.
Another strange twist in a twisty tale.
Wait, and this has nothing to do with the actual case, but it's just like, and that was shared on Facebook, right? Kayla Shock comments on it. ... What
does that mean? She's like, what the hell?
Yeah. And I was just thinking about this. So timing wise, this actually would have happened between the verdict and the sentencing.
It's weird.
Tracey, what are you doing?
I know, it's weird because I'm like, okay, you've been in jail for 2 weeks.
Right. It's not like she's been in there 2 years now and didn't take much convincing for this. I don't know. It just doesn't seem like the actions of somebody who's like really regretting their actions and what they're, you know what I mean? And like your mind is on other things if you're now messing around with women here. And I'm just like, of all the things.
Right.
And then you get extorted.
Yeah, right. I mean, I think, like you're saying, this is no judgment on sexuality. People have whatever sexual identity they do.
I mean, I am judging you for cheating on your husband. I don't know. It's just like another weird thing added on at the end.
That is, like, wow, good find, Maryn. That is quite...
I couldn't really... I was like, oh, there's this other article. And I clicked on like, what? What happened?
What is this? How did this not get out there? How do people not know about this
Somebody
story?
else commented on it, and they said something like, because she was a teacher in that county, right? They said something like, yeah, I remember my son came home from a class that she taught, you know, back in the day, and he said, she is definitely gay. So I'm like, I don't know. Maybe this was some suppressed thing.
So maybe prison is, she doesn't want to get out early. Maybe this is a good thing.
Yeah. Though I guess even consensual sexual encounters are not allowed in prison. So even that they weren't supposed to be doing. But
there's no way. There's no way that that's going to be enforced. I mean, or that prisoners are going to live by that.
Or that they're not like they're not getting away with it, or that that's not happening. Right. So with that weird turn end to that story, I don't know. It's like it also kind of pulls away a little bit from the like poor grandma image, right? Of like, I don't know, she looks a little less grandmotherly.
Right. I guess the image that they were working hard to portray seems a bit altered by, or doesn't seem consistent with the image that they've been trying to portray.
Yeah, I mean, everything that I saw on, like, Facebook from, like, Tracey's Facebook, she didn't post anything after the deaths, but, like, before that, I mean, tons of pictures with family and whatever, like, very happy family and, like, real people and just, like, sad. Just such a sad thing that happened.
It is very sad.
I'm glad that the family at least feels some sense of justice with that, and hopefully, I mean, they are still family. Hopefully, they'll be able to do whatever's best for them and their relationship and whatever that ends up meaning.
I don't know what that would look like. I can't even imagine how I would handle something like that if it were me. And I could certainly understand saying, you know, I mean, I have to have a boundary for my own well-being. Like, this is not a forgive and forget and we just go back. I don't know what that would look like, but whatever it is, I say it's fair. You know, whatever they decide, I say that's justified.
Well, I think one thing, like, Kayla posted a lot on her Facebook page of just, I think leading up to the trial, did a lot of like, Mom, please end this, is what she kept saying.
Like, which by pleading guilty?
I think, yes. That's my assumption, is like, you're dragging this out. Why are you sitting here trying to fight this and say, no,
it's not my fault. It's not my fault. I'm not guilty. Though I'm sure, like, aggravated manslaughter, like, the term for that, like the sentencing. But I also wonder if there was the opportunity to plead down to something lesser if she had pled guilty and not made them go through this whole trial.
Yep.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Well, that ended up being a lot more exciting than I expected. I thought this was going to be way too boring for anyone to want to listen to, but
little small town grandma.
Yeah. My episode might be boring. So sorry, guys. It's not all that exciting, but this episode makes up for it.
Yeah. There you go. Well, I mean, again, like, I think it's interesting hearing it from the courtroom perspective and like how that all unfolds. So, but yeah, this one has a little more drama maybe, but
yeah. Well, thanks for joining us for this crazy roller coaster of Tracey Nix.
Yeah. Also, I haven't said this in any of our others, so I feel like I should say too, we do have an Instagram. It is at Hung Podcast on Instagram, so follow us there. We'll periodically post updates, and we'll obviously post every time that a new episode is out.
Yeah, like and follow.
Subscribe.
That's right. Like and subscribe. I don't know, depending on what platform you listen on, it's either follow or subscribe.
Yep.
But we hope you keep coming back and you enjoy these stories as much as we do.
Yep. Well, I'm Maryn.
I'm Christie.
And you're listening to Hung.